with RVSS, and there may be an option to run a couple of storm drain lines down behind the civic center in that area. You know, it looks like a wetlands, and there's storm water and stuff down there now. That may be an option instead of using this type of system.
I'm just something a little bit unusual here. We're going to have a lot of give and take between you and your audience, us, us, and you, etc. But we have 3 people that signed up this evening. I just noticed, and they're here for something that's not on the agenda. And I see a channel here also. So we're going to go on for quite a long time regarding this particular subject. And I want to kind of take a time out for a second and welcome 3 people to talk about your agenda item or your item that's not on the agenda. And you mentioned drug use here. And I'm going to give you both each up to 3 minutes to talk about what you want to talk about. And we're going to have you come on up here and say your name and your address and talk about your particular item. And I got John, the coordinator. Okay. Yes. And just right here. Have a seat and say your name and address. And
yeah, my name is John, coordinator. I live at 508 Orchard Place, Phoenix. Okay. Local resident. I work here. We own a home. I have all my neighbors here with me except one. Mm-hmm. We live in a cul-de-sac there in Orchard Place. We all own our home. I work locally here. Law-abiding, tax-paying citizens. Sure. For months now, since the summer, we've been bombarded with drug use from this place. And we need some help. I've got, like I said, 5 of us are here. The 6th one is not. This goes on all night long. I've got cameras, activity every 10 to 20 minutes, and this is from 11:30 to about 6 in the morning, and it's been this all day long. We've got pets that are being turned loose, stolen cars. It's all night long, and basically what I'm asking is I want to know. Because at this point, at any given time, we can look and see 15 cars minimum all over the place. And is there anything that constitutes, what does it take for me to run a hotel, a motel, or a hostel out of my home? Because we know drugs are illegal. And it's just, and I can't say enough about the Phoenix Police Department. Absolutely helping me 100%. But is there anything that we can do together?
John, you do need to take this issue to the police, to the city manager.
Yeah.
We're not going to debate that tonight. I appreciate your efforts here, really do. It's a hell of a problem to have to go through. But I want you to come into the office and talk to the city manager and set up a meeting with the police department and go over your issues. And they're going to head on for you, and then they can come to city council if you have any recommendations on what to do from there.
Absolutely. Just got to find a place to start.
That's really the process. They direct the police department to work on things. Okay. And it starts with typically this gentleman here, the new city manager coming in on Thursday. His name is Dave Cantor.
Okay, great.
Very experienced guy. He's top notch.
Okay.
And he can address the issue also.
Okay.
And Derek Boker, I think Derek Boker, the police chief, is right there for you. He's heard you. He'll hear the
great.
Here.
Okay,
so you're in the right place at the right time.
Oh, well, perfect.
Okay.
Okay, and I know you're all busy. I just wanted to get that out there. I didn't know where to start, but we are kind of desperate here.
Okay, I understand.
Okay, well, God bless. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Anybody else like to talk to me? Or-
Yeah.
Okay.
Evidence.
Please.
Okay. Give your name, please.
My name is Phoenix Sigelman, and I live at 515 Orchard Place, the same cul-de-sac.
Thank you.
5 of the 6 homes, as John said, are families. And my partner and I have 4 beautiful children. We're a blended family. We've only been in the neighborhood a couple of months. And of all the places in Southern Oregon that we've lived with our families, this is the least safe we've ever felt. Approximately 3 years ago, I witnessed one of the individuals walk around the front of the house with a semi-automatic pistol, a Glock type of pistol, and I called the police. They responded. They went up to the front door, rang the bell, and there was no answer. They waited there maybe 5 minutes or so for somebody to come out. Nobody did. And they had no choice but to leave. And I understand that they need a warrant. There has to be probable cause for them to go in and see what's happening. But in my opinion, this is criminal activity that's going on in this home, in our neighborhood, 20 feet from our children. In addition, as John said, that there are easily 15 to 20 cars coming and going at all hours of the day and night. And they're not only coming straight up to the house, they're also parking on Barnum and walking in with their bags, and walking out with bags. And it's the type of people that are coming into our neighborhood, where there's criminal activity, where there's drugs, where there's guns, where there's desperation. The threat that something sinister is going to happen is real. So those of us who have small children in particular are very hesitant to allow them to go out and play as they would love to do. It doesn't feel like a safe place to be because there are transient people coming in and out at all hours of the day and night. So it's a major problem, and we're here because there's nothing more precious in the world, and we need help.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate that. Thank you. Well said. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for your time.
Very well.
Thank you.
So we're gonna go back into the Church Street discussion. And do you want to say anything else for open up to the public to talk?
Go ahead.
I'm good. Okay, great. Thank you. Right. Carolina Marshall, you can.
Nah, I don't have a Church Street thing. I'm like comments not on the agenda.
Go ahead.
It's my spiel.
You can get it.
All right. Thank you, you're so kind. My name's Carolina Marshall. I live on Bulls Road in Phoenix. I work and pray and eat in Phoenix. The next community dinner is Thursday, February 8th. Our motto is, it's a dinner, not a crisis, but I'm having a crisis. Alfred's not coming back. He was going to be here tonight with me at the Urban Renewal and talk kitchen equipment, but he's staying in Colorado with his family. So anyway, I have lined up another cook and I'm getting the crew together, but it was pretty scary. So February 8th, be kind when you come to dinner. And Chris, I want to tell you, I found my folder on the lists of things for the community center when we were speaking about it and having our dreams. And you're in there. You're one of the people that's one of the people that was at that meeting, and Chance Fencegoater and Dakota Mayhews and all the kids that were there.
I'll get a copy of that.
I'll get you one. It's quite wonderful to look back at all our lists, and I'll do that another time when I come on time to the Urban Renewal. And I'm so tired. I almost didn't come in, and then one of your neighbors came and said, "You can do it, Carolina. Go on in there. You'll be fine." So in I came. And in the minutes, it said Carolina read Wild Geese into the record. I wondered how she was going to do that. That was perfect. And I'm going to say something kind of controversial to end. I like the road diet. Don't tell the community they're going to hate me. Please don't hate me for this, but I like it. I like the slowed down traffic. I feel safer walking. And I've counted 97 bikes going the right way. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Zena. We're back to Church Street, guys.
My name is Zena Aria, and I live at 215 North Church. We'll be impacted by whatever the street does. And I just had a couple of questions about, once they break ground, what do they anticipate the timeline being that the street's torn up? I'm just curious if anybody's got an idea of that.
On a 2,000-foot street improvement project like that, it's probably going to be 2 months. But what they do is they'll do it in block sections.
Mm-hmm.
So if they start at the north end, the people on the south half won't even be impacted. So in reality, you're probably looking at an impact of, and what I consider an impact, you know, construction zone, dust. You're always going to be able to get into your driveway. There may be a time though when they're doing utilities in front of your driveway that for 4 hours, 6 hours or something, you can't. But at the end of each night, they'll plate everything so you can get in and out. So you're probably looking at 2 weeks to 3 weeks per block section. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
reasonable,
I mean, the whole project's gonna take 3 months, yeah.
No, I was looking at 6 months per block.
No.
Okay, well, that's,
So, yeah.
I like that. I'm glad I have any choice about it.
And these are typical too, so
Right, there's,
if we get unfortunate contractor that's slow, we're gonna do our best to hurry them along, and then there's time constraints to, you know, they have liquidated damage to have those things done in a timely manner, so we do have means to speed them up and make sure they stay on schedule.
the other thing I want to thank is whoever the volunteers are that come door to door and put a sticker on the door when the meeting is, because I don't read the paper, I don't read anything. So, it's stuck on the door and I have to look at it on my way in, it's very helpful. I mean, I want to come to the meetings, I want to participate and have my desires known. So I'm just thanking whoever does
Sarah's
that.
done some of that, Terry's done
Yeah,
some of that, the staff has done some of that,
Appreciate it.
team effort.
I already asked Devin one question about the, bulb on the end, on the corners of the sidewalk, and he's made it clear that probably that's gonna happen on all the corners.
Slow ups.
And thank you for really looking at this huge impact and downsizing it. Whatever it comes to is gonna be better than that immense street. I would personally like option 2, the first little option, because you've got parking on both sides. You only have a sidewalk on one, but someone stood up last time and said, consider whether or not if you have parking only on one side of the street, is that gonna be okay with you and your side? And if, you know, somebody just has a house party, that impacts how many people are parking on that street, so that's my 2
Thank you.
cents. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you. Tony?
Tony Chavez, 210 North Church. First two things, the Skinny Street design that was put in here was not the one that we petitioned for and presented to the council. Don't know why that one was put in there. That kind of seems misleading on our approach to the Skinny Street.
You had that one to begin with, right?
Correct.
And two parking, right, one on each
Correct.
side with one sidewalk.
Correct. And all those measurements were listed on the top of the petition of the copies that everybody got, so I'm not sure where the confusion got when this Skinny Street got put in to the presentation and the agenda packet. And the other question was for you.
Sure.
I didn't hear any conversation of the effects of traffic speeds on the different widths.
Right. In the TSP, obviously maybe obviously isn't the right word. The higher the speeds, the bigger the improvements. The national AASHTO standards that we looked at was based on a 25-foot speed limit, 25 mile an hour speed limit. So it wasn't like we were looking at a 30, 35, or 40. So those standards are for 9-foot lanes. That's the minimum they recommend.
Well, the effects of traffic speed on the width of lanes is a very, we have a traffic speeding problem on Church Street already.
Okay.
Making it wider is gonna impact that even more. So that's something that needs to really be considered.
Okay.
Real quick, when we first looked at houses in Phoenix 13 years ago, we came to Phoenix twice, and we looked at north of town by the bank in that neighborhood, and we said, no, we don't want to live in a ranch type neighborhood. We're looking for older stuff. The third time we came, we realized we found Church Street and Pine Street, and that was the type of neighborhood that we were looking for. An older, small town, quiet neighborhood. And I think a lot of us would agree that's why we're on Church Street, and we'd like to keep that feel. So anything that you decide is going to affect that feel. I know there's safety things to consider, future stuff to consider, but we're there. A lot of us are there because we chose to be on that street and in that neighborhood, and we'd like that to be considered when you guys make your decisions. There's a lot of talk of traffic studies and consultant stuff, but statistics can't take into consideration the unique scenario that we have on Church Street. It is what it is, and that stuff needs to carry some weight just as much as national statistics do. So please look at that. For the last 2 times we went out of town, when we came home for the first time in 13 years, we actually weren't happy to come home. And that's pretty big for us. And that's a lot of because of this, and what this represents a lot of problems that the city's had in the past, going through projects and handling things correctly. This is pretty big for a lot of us, and I hope you guys realize that we're not just charts and graphs. So, anyways, thank you.
Tony, before you get up, because you were kind of looking at me when you were talking about the dimensions that were in the packet.
Yes.
Okay, so if I'm looking at this right, then you're basically, what you're telling me is there's 2 8-foot travel lanes, 8-foot parking on both sides.
No,
Okay, what is-
Chris,
814.
it's right in front of you, Eric, right there.
I think it's 814, 85.
Okay,
It's very close to the hydrant option.
I guess that's my point.
It's very close,
Yeah.
but we took time to do a petition. We talked with people. A lot of people were a little intimidated by city council meetings, and we assured them, go to the meeting. Your voice makes a difference. And we gave the measurements on the petition. We gave information on it, and then the packet comes out, and the wrong street design is in it. And that wrong street design is what went out to councilors to study and look at, and it's not what we petitioned for.
Okay, I apologize for that information that was incorrectly put in there. Sorry.
All right. Thank you.
But I want to remark it's pretty close to our hydrants. Yeah, it is.
But the minus, the subtraction of that one parking strip makes it very unappealing to almost everybody. And that's why it stacks the cards against people hear Skinny Street, but then they see what was in the packet, and it puts a cloud over the Skinny Street design because that one parking strip is missing.
Duly apologize, I duly noted.
Tony, just for visual, will you look at the Skinny Street version on the left there? So essentially, you're talking about taking out the top 5-foot sidewalk and putting in an 8-foot parking there.
Correct.
8, 14, 8, and
Yeah.
5-foot sidewalk. Correct. So it's essentially that, so it's only 3 feet wider than like Skinny Street is, but you got 2 parking and then 1 sidewalk. That was the option. Yeah.
Martha now?
Okay, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Martha Hess, 110 4th Street, corner of 4th and Church. Just reiterating what Tony was saying, I really like what we came up with the petition. You know, it took me a while to wrap my brain around just how big the SDP was until I realized it would be 4th Street. It would be 4th Street going down Church and 4th Street going down Pine if it's considered that we want to keep a consistency throughout the neighborhood that I'm glad that you're considering these options that are not that impactful. I want to encourage you to consider the option that is safe with the least impact. I've lived on that street for, I think, 14 years this year, and I sit outside and read a lot, and so I actually notice the foot traffic a lot. I don't think that we need sidewalks on both sides. The only time that it's very busy in terms of foot traffic is for about an hour during lunch, during the high school lunch, during school hours. Otherwise, there is not a lot of foot traffic on Church. People are walking to the post office and the Minute Market, but it's usually one person at a time.
Right.
So, I do have some really big trees on my property. There's a heron that comes over and nests in it some years, and I would love to keep those. So, thank you for the consideration.
Thank you. That was our last speaker. One detail we gotta take care of this evening is that we have one council that does live on Church Street, Church Street. And there's something in the law called a pecuniary interest. It can relate to a financial interest that a councilor may have with regard to a decision that a councilor is going to make. This case here is not a direct financial benefit to one of our councilors, it comes a little closer to Church Street also. But we're gonna have Doug just talk for a second about what we should do in terms of just saying, hey, we live on Church Street and we're just gonna announce that we live there just before we have the discussion this evening, because we might move to a decision.
Yeah, there's, for the state law, there's just a requirement for if there's conflict of interest. It oftentimes happens, especially in small cities, but it can happen anywhere. And if you have a financial interest, or if your family has a financial interest in any kind of decision you make, you should at least let that be known. If in fact your decision is based on something that has a direct financial impact on you, like for instance, you're going to quote on your own contract, in the city, that would probably eliminate you from, you would just announce that and say you recuse yourself from it. There are some that are maybe less direct, that is, in this kind of particular situation, if you live there, you might have some impact on your streets and stuff, but, this, for all you know, might or might not improve your property values. You don't know, so there really isn't any necessarily a statement as to whether or not it's impacting good. It's a possibility. So if you have that kind of conflict, you would just essentially announce that you say that I'm aware that I do have an interest in this, I have personal interest, I live on the street, for instance, and with that known, just my position here is that I will not recuse myself. If that's what you want to do. If that's not what you want to do, but you can say that I will not recuse myself. I'm announcing that I'm back to the public that I do have this interest. So if it was so great or so big that someone in the audience or public or one of the other members chose to contest that and contest the decision, that could always go up in a trial or a court would make a decision as to whether or not that kind of interest is so large that you couldn't possibly not again, if you going in your own contract, it'd be pretty self-evident.
But in this case, I only enough, but in this case here, Terry can,
yeah, I don't know who is in there. Yeah, right. Well, in your case, yeah. No, right.
But let's just hear Street. Just announce where you live and you're going.
Sure. I live at 612 North Church Street, right next to the post office. Ironically, the part in front of my home is already cut out for the full boat, right? So no matter what happens on the rest of the road, I think I'm pretty much where I'm gonna be. I don't see them making it narrower, so it's already down. I would like to vote on this because I'd like to advocate for my neighbors, who'd like to have narrow roads, right?
Thank you, I just want to put that out there, anything that we need to do in this case, no? Okay, great. One more item before we move to council discussion. I just want to remind council that you guys are the policymakers, right? And you have very wide latitude as far as directing the city manager on how to direct staff. Staff does not set policy, council does. And I encourage you to incorporate the views of Church Street residents into the decisions. We're going to make this unanimous vote. We're going to have a say in it a while. But I just want to make sure that we incorporate what they're saying to us into how we're going to proceed. With that said, I gave Stuart a heads up. I was going to send Stuart first, and then we can talk to some of his constituents. And I used to meet people, I meet with people. I just want you to go first, and then we're going to write down the line and talk about this decision that we're going to make this evening. And also, Jim is here to answer any questions you may have while we're having council discussions. Now we're going to begin our deliberation. Okay? Questions before we start in the process?
Can we ask the questions and then deliberate?
I don't see why we can't. That's fine. So Terry, you have a question?
On this one. I just had two quick questions. First, I noticed you have the water and sewer utilities going down the sides of the road.
That's where they're currently at.
Are you gonna lay them down the center? Can you?
The sewer, we're gonna, in a perfect world, we're gonna try to replace the sewer where it's at by putting a liner inside of it. And that way we don't have to open trench it and impact the trees. The sewer and the water are the two big things that are gonna affect these trees. I'm not saying the road isn't, but the sewer and the water is the big impact, because you're gonna have a 3 to 4 foot wide trench by however deep the utility is. The sewer's averaging 7 or 8 feet, and the water is typically 3 feet of cover, so you got an 8-inch pipe, so you're looking at 4 feet deep. And you go cut that through those tree roots, it's gonna kill some trees.
I'm just, because I worked in excavation for years,
Right.
built lots of roads.
Right.
We ran those right down the center.
Yeah.
I'm just curious if that's an option here.
Well, the water and sewer has to have a 10-foot separation by code. So that's one option, and then, or not option, but something we need to think about. And then as far as the storm tech chambers that I showed you, those are gonna have to go in between whatever utilities. If we can't do what's called a regional detention area down behind the new city center.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so again, if we can't slip line the sewer would be dug up in place and put back right where it's at. There's utility sanitary sewer service lines that you got to tie back in, and RVSS makes that decision on where that line goes, and they told me if we cannot slip line it, it's going to go back in where it originally is. We have leeway on the water, we as in the city, we would shift that in towards the street to lessen the impact of the trees and move it over as far as we can to lessen that impact, but still allow us room for the stuff in the middle of the street that we got to do.
So if I understand correctly,
Yeah.
if we can't go in and just go slip line, go inside the
Right.
sewer line, we may lose trees anyway
Yes.
from the removal?
Yes.
Okay. Then my next question, then I'm done.
Yeah. No. I was just going to say.
As many as you want to. It's open.
Yeah, I'm here for as long as you guys need me. So there are going to be trees impacted by the water and the sewer, regardless of how wide the street is. We're doing everything we can, and we're looking at all the options to try to minimize those. RVSS owns the sewer line, so they're gonna decide how that's replaced. Originally, they were just going to open cut it, and then when we sent them the aerials and they saw the impact, the size of the trees, they said, you know, it's worth looking at to see if we could do another construction option to try to save some trees. So they're on board, they're trying to do everything they can, but when those concrete pipes separate, and if that separation gets so big, that process won't work. If it's a minimal separation, then they're able to it looks like a fiberglass sock that they put in there and they blow it up and then they pump steam in there and then it expands and hardens and then they send a robot down there to clean out or dig out the connection point.
That's very cool, but.
Yeah, it is. So
That's cool.
just to reiterate, I just want to throw it out there that the city, they're looking at all the options. So it's not like they just said, hey, we own the right of way, it's ours, we're putting a street in there. So, yeah, we're doing everything we can to try to
The
minimize
one thing we talked about at our meeting the other day, Stuart, there, the pavement, when you're, if you dig up pavement for sewer or water, it should be within the pavement itself. You don't want the sewer lines underneath the sidewalk. So moving road this way, that way a little bit is okay, but you gotta make sure the pavement covers the utilities. You don't want to dig up sidewalks
Right.
into your utilities, right?
In an ideal situation, we would prefer to have the utilities under the asphalt because it's
Right.
cheaper to dig up asphalt, saw cut it and replace it than to jackhammer concrete and replace the sidewalks. So by narrowing, let's see, this option, these two options right here, the standard where we started was 47 feet. This option's 43 and this option's 39. So there's 4 feet difference between the two right there. And it pulled in the hardscape 2 feet, and that was enough to pull the sidewalk, the utility out of from underneath the sidewalk is what I'm trying to say. It shifted it enough for the most part. Because the sewer lines, you know, they're varying from, you know, at the north end to the south end, like I said, anywhere from 10 to 15 feet off the right of way. So we're averaging the location of that. So when you see this diagram here with that pipe right there, it looks like the actual pipe's right at the drip line of the tree. That's not really the case. If you look here, and it's going to be hard for you guys to see this, but for instance, this is the sewer line right here. And there's a big tree there, a big tree there, a big tree there, and that sewer line's going, you know, I believe that tree's 48 inch, and that, or 40, and that one's 48. That sewer line's within 6 feet of the trunk of that tree. And then you go through there with a 4-foot swath. So that's why RDSS is looking at trying to slip line those utilities.
Sure, you have more questions?
The last question.
What do you think?
Is it feasible to use different options on different stretches of the road?
It's possible, but we don't like to do that because it confuses the driver that's going down Church Street.
Well, this really would, what I'm talking about, because Church Street makes some.
Right, there's some dog legs
Right,
in there.
and so their mindset, if you will, would be changed anyway, because they're gonna be on a different road.
Yeah.
So when they turn left, like, you know, to make that final jog over, I'm thinking in front of Tony's place, you know, that's gonna be a different impact than is in front of, down on different sections, and I don't know if that's, is that just not, is it feasible?
It could be an option. We haven't looked at that. On the option, something else we looked at that I think is important to point out. On the option with the 6-foot sidewalk, this option right here, if I'm in your guys' way, just tell me to move, but yeah. This option right here, we also looked at alternating the side that sidewalk's on in the different blocks where Church Street goes over and then Dog Legs and then goes over, just to lessen the impact of the trees. We looked at, and this gets sticky, so the trees on the east side of the road provide shade in the afternoon for the homes. The trees on the west side, the shade's going into the street. So I mean, we've even looked at that type of stuff. But you don't want to say the guy's tree on the east side is more important than the guy's tree on the west side. So that gets, you know, and then we also looked at shifting the improvements as well, not centering them in the right way, but then you're impacting the neighbors on one side versus the other. So that's why we've got them centered, to try to be fair. But if there's, you know, if we're going to lose a 48-inch tree, a 40-inch tree, you know, those are things we really need to take a hard look at and see if there's anything we could do. If it means putting a sidewalk on that side of that section, you know, we're going to look at that option. So.
That's all I had, thanks.
Yeah. Hopefully I answered.
Somebody recognize the threshold?
I got a question, and you brought this up actually the other day, and I just want to ask him, the parking stall sizes. So when we have 8 foot, and that's kind of been like the talk, 8 foot, 8 foot, 8 foot, is it possible to go smaller with those, and what's the impact of going smaller?
Okay, it's funny that you said that, because I'm sitting up here with possibly 2 cracked ribs at an incident that happened 3 days ago because of this. I've seen parking bays as narrow as 7 feet, and typical is 8. A standard car is 7 to 7.5 feet wide. All these pickups, Ford, Chevy, GMCs, from mirror to mirror, they're 8.5 feet wide. So my recommendation, I wouldn't go less than 7.5. I would recommend 8. The problem you get is if you get a small car parked in there, it's good, but if you get a pickup parked in there and somebody opens their door, a car's going to hit it. That's what happened. I was riding my bike in a bike lane, and this lady didn't look and open up the door, and I smashed into it, flipped over the car door. So I hit the corner of the door right here. But anyway, yeah. So my personal opinion, I've seen them as narrow as 7, standards 8. My comfort level, I wouldn't go less than 7.5, and I'd prefer 8, just to get them as wide as possible. So here we don't have a bike lane that gives you an extra 2 or 3 feet. You've got the travel lanes. I mean, these 2 is where I'm hanging my hat, regardless of, I think this is in a perfect world, but we're impacting too much stuff. This is too narrow. If we add 8-foot parking to this, we're getting really close to this with the sidewalk on the one side. But the travel lanes, here, you got your travel lanes and then you got 8-foot parking. Somebody's parking here and they open up a door, door's 3.5 feet, sticks out farther. I mean, you can see what can happen. I personally wouldn't.
It's not gonna make a difference.
It's not gonna make a difference.
Well, it could make a difference. It could be the difference between you getting a parked car's door or not, but wider is better for a safety point.
Well, at that point, it's the drivers open the doors fault, not the.
Well, yeah, I agree with that.
Right,
Until it's roots then.
Thank you.
I just have a question. So the trees, so when you're digging and all that, when will the trees be, if the tree's gonna be removed? Do you wait till it dies? Do you remove it at the time when you're putting in the?
Typically what happens is, and this is just past projects, they hire an arborist and they come out and look and see what the impact's gonna be.
Okay.
And if that person says, it's gonna kill the tree, some of these trees are pretty big, they don't wanna wait till they start to die and fall on somebody's house or.
We have 3 of them.
Yeah, that's a safety issue. So, yeah, so to answer your question, I would recommend somebody be hired, a professional to come out. We can show them where the line is, what the impact's gonna be. Yeah, so that would be my recommendation.
Sarah, you got a question? 2 feet. Okay, cool, thank you.
Yeah, I have a couple questions so one, on the 14-foot configuration for the lane width, is it accurate to say, so it would be 2-way, right?
Yeah,
That
that
was
is considered a 2-way configuration.
And then is it accurate that 2 cars couldn't pass at the same time? Or would you kind of have to pull off? That was my understanding, but.
Yeah, it is physically possible for 2 small cars to get by in a 14-foot lane, but you could be ripping each other's mirror off. And again, I want to iterate. Personally, I didn't even want to put this in here because I don't think it's feasible or viable. At a bare minimum, the 14-foot. And again, Ashland has this type of street in short segments. They limit it to 450 feet. And it's limited to new construction where they have control of where the driveways are. So the motorists, when they're coming head on, they have the ability to pull in front of a driveway to let the other person pass.
Right.
So, and then Ashland also requires parking on both sides of this type of lane configuration. configuration.
Okay.
Yeah.
So even, in your opinion, even if we added another 8 foot, for parking, you wouldn't recommend
Correct.
the 7 feet lanes?
Yeah, the 14-foot two-way is too narrow.
Too close.
And again, I know you guys don't want to hear national standards, and the national standards is 19 feet. The city and these two options here have already went down to 16 feet, so it's a compromise. That's why we're calling it a hybrid. And something else to consider, and again, I'm just here for information. These streets, when we design a street of this magnitude, is supposed the longevity of it or the lifespan of it, we're supposed to look out 20 years. So you've got the main street, and then unfortunately Church Street is parallel it. It's the next street over. So the ability or the chance that traffic's going to grow on this street, the probability is the word I probably should use, is likely.
So build the street to
That's
detour
what
the
middle
traffic,
small.
to detour the traffic.
Sorry,
Excuse me, but, you know, the whole purpose of this is to slow traffic down. I live on Church Street, and I watch people walking in the street, cars coming by beside, they slow down because there's people in the street. That's good.
Right.
When there's nobody in
I'm
the street,
agreeing with it
they're-
slows traffic down.
when there's nobody in the street, they're speeding down the road. So I like the 14-footer because the fact is, it's gonna slow people down. If you see a car coming on, you don't have enough room, you're gonna either give way or you're gonna run in. So what are you gonna do? If you've got any sense, you're gonna give way. As far as I'm concerned.
It's also very rare to see
Can I answer his question before we go to the next question? The 14-footer, if this was a new street and the city had the ability to pick and choose where the driveways were, may be an option with parking on both sides. Because if you have driveways so they're not lined up with each other, if they're staggered, what that does is if cars meet head on, it gives that car the ability to pull over if there isn't cars parked there. Because a car isn't going to park in front of somebody's driveway. Well, they may. I'm going to take it. But I mean, that's something else. You know, we have to consider, and that's why Medford and Ashland has that in their, and Phoenix has that in their TSP. Is one for where they don't have the 60-foot right of way, they have 40 and 50-foot right of ways. And two, if a new subdivision or a new street's being designed and they have that luxury of placing those driveways, and those are typically limited to 450 feet.
Jim, we're gonna point in this direction for a little bit.
Sure.
I still want to keep going to the city council question before we go into the
All right.
questions. Sarah, you were up, you have another one?
Yeah, let's see. Oh, so, and I just wanted to clarify, so it sounds like the impacts to trees and, it has more to do with the fixing of the sewer system and the water lines than it does with the width of the road, is that
That
accurate?
is correct.
Okay, so that's a key piece.
The larger impact to the trees are relative to the utility lines.
And that's a necessary fix, we have,
Right,
yeah, okay.
In the ground.
RBSS is going to fix the sewer line regardless if the street project dies or goes forward.
Right.
And they're looking at trying, like I said, it's called a slip line or a cured in place process. They're looking at that, but I can't promise the residents if they're gonna be able to do that. But they are doing everything they can in their power to look at it, to try to minimize the trees. So even if the project dies, that sewer line's going in. And the water line is AC and it's failing right now.
The water is AC, what is it?
AC pipe.
Okay.
And it's an old pipe, it's been around for a long time, it's brittle, yeah. It's brittle and it cracks. So that, we're on borrowed time as it is on that line as well. So those two utilities are gonna have to get replaced fairly soon.
Okay, thank you.
The sewer was actually scheduled this summer, but then it got pushed back with this project.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
Just a hitchhike what Sarah said. Also the impact, is if you have pavement and sidewalk going right next to trees, the closer you get to the trees with impervious surfaces, the more it's gonna hurt the trees. Right?
yeah, and I wanted to clarify that. It does impact the trees because it doesn't allow the rainwater to go down into the roots, and when you go in there for the street and the sidewalk, you have to excavate out below that for the rock, for the road and everything, and you're digging through those roots. That's typically a 2-foot excavation versus the water is going to be probably a 4 to 5 foot deep by 4 feet wide, and the sewers could be 9 feet deep.
So it's the underneath and on top, the impervious surface.
Yes.
Right, okay, good. More questions, guys? Go ahead.
If we, let's say we miraculously don't kill the trees with our roots, right? We manage to get the sidewalks right up next to the trees. As they grow, how's that gonna affect the sidewalk? Just gonna crack it?
It could, that is one reason why the sidewalks are called curb tight. In a lot of cities, you'll see a landscape area behind the curb, 6 to 8 feet. Some even are as narrow as 4, and then you have your sidewalk. Well, here, we knew we were going to impact trees, so we pulled them curb tight. But yeah, depending on the trees, it could cause problems with the sidewalk at a later date, lifting them up. You see it all around town in certain types of. And again, when or if the city hires an arborist, they'll come out and look at the trees, the proximity of the improvements, and certain types of trees are more they impact the sidewalks and stuff like that. So those are all things that we have to look at. The first thing we need is to decide on a section, and then we've got to design it, and the stormwater issue out there is really bad because everything's flat. So we're going to have to do a roller coaster effect, not that you would really notice the naked eye, but to deal with the stormwater. So we may be going a little bit higher than existing in some areas and a little lower. So that's going to lessen the impact on some of the trees and places and impact them more where we have to push it down. Right. So there's all kinds of options and all kinds of things that are going to impact the project.
Thanks. Two questions for you. Staff put the sidewalk on the west side. One reason was because on the east side, there's a certain grade of the land that is less good for the sidewalk. Did you hear that, or that make any impact or difference?
I didn't hear that. Yes, it makes an impact until we decide the street section. Then we're going to lay it in the topo survey, and then we're going to know that impact.
Last question: 5 foot versus 6 foot sidewalk. Okay. I heard someone say that the 6 foot sidewalk is good for encouraging walking versus a 5 foot sidewalk. When you talk about 5 foot sidewalks, is there a real necessity to have a 6 foot sidewalk versus a 5 foot sidewalk? And if so, why is it necessary?
On a typical street, this is just information, and then give my opinion. Then I'll give you my opinion. Cities like to have sidewalks on both sides, so you don't have pedestrians crossing the road to get to the sidewalk. If you have sidewalks on both sides, they're typically 5 feet. If you're going to eliminate the sidewalk on one side, you typically make it a little wider, so when people are crossing each other, passing each other, there's a little more room. That's a preference. There's the only code that you need to be aware of or whatever is there are ADA standards that if you have power poles, which is another item that we haven't even talked about here, you got to have a minimum clear space for somebody in a wheelchair to be able to pass. So that's another reason why they make them a little wider.
Or we're not going to have telephone poles in our sidewalks.
Well, maybe that is a possibility. And with that being said, and no, we're not going to put them right in the middle of the sidewalk. There are a lot of power poles that are out there that are going to have to be relocated as part of this project. Once we have a section, then we'll meet PPNL and have them relocate the poles, preferably behind the sidewalk, whether the sidewalk is 5 feet or 6 feet. So to answer your question, if you only have sidewalk on one side, they typically make it a little wider, so because all the pedestrians are on one side.
Is that mandatory?
No, that is not mandatory.
It's not mandatory.
No.
Okay.
Cool.
That's just a practice. So,
okay. More questions before we go into the deliberations?
So, can I say something? What
working.
All right.
I have one more question, then we're gonna move forward, and we've heard a lot, and we're gonna take everything that we've heard into our deliberations. But one more final question, and fire away.
I was gonna say, why don't we just put the power underground, we don't have to worry about the power poles.
If we had the millions of dollars to do that, that'd be great, but it is unbelievably expensive.
Yeah.
That'd be
Yeah.
nice.
It's all right, I give it a try anyway, it's all right.
When is the sewer construction beginning? Because it's gonna happen anyway, right? I mean, even if the road were to die, when is that?
Next fiscal year is what I've been told. We were trying to get it to happen this summer because we were hoping that the construction process would happen this summer. But then when we laid out the wide street and started to see all the impacts, we came to the city and said, you guys are gonna wanna look at this because we're impacting, a lot of stuff. Or there's a lot of encroachments. And then we started looking at the sewer and the water and so it has pushed it out a little bit. But talking with RDSS, it's scheduled next fiscal year.
One last question.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry I didn't talk earlier.
That's okay. It's a little, so say
401 North Church, corner 4th and Church.
Lynn, C-O-H-E-N, right?
Right,
And was it 401?
yes.
Church.
So it seems like the Skinny Street is against his better judgment. And it seems like the council's probably going to listen to his better judgment. Well, Tony last month had made the packet that he made and had a petition, and most people, there was over 30 people that had signed the petition saying that we would love to have a skinny street. And again, I have to say, make it one way. If we can't have the skinny street and try and get two people to go past each other, make it one way, and then that would have the least amount of street impact. That's all.
Yeah, good one.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chris.
Let's move into, thank you very much, audience. We're going to go into the deliberation. At the point there, we really want to focus up here, and I don't mean to cut people off, but we do need to cut up at some point so we can do our business up here. We're going to go into the deliberations. I'm going to recognize each of you to speak, and then we're going to get into a bit of discussion. As I mentioned before, students here have been talking to people, and guys, I want to give you a chance to kick it off, and then we'll go right down the line.
Sure. I heard a lot from a lot of folks, emails, phone calls, meetings, lots of coffee. And first of all, I feel really lucky to have a city that feels comfortable coming to talk to us. I think that's great. And the more we can do this, the better we can actually make decisions on this side of the table. So I want to encourage you all to maintain this, even though things in the future may not be directing your or affecting your front yard. Please continue to come to meetings. Please continue to reach out to us because it makes our job a whole lot more effective. We can actually do the things that you want to do if we know what you want us to do. If we don't hear from you, it's really hard to guess. Second of all, I do live close to the street, so I will feel this impact. My neighbors will be impacted. One of them's here, she's across the street from me. She's gonna have a monster impact. And I have friends that live on the street like Tony, and so I've had a chance to really kind of feel this one out, and I'm going to see. I will be impacted by the construction as well. That being said, some of the things I really think are important for this decision-making process for us are maintaining the small street feel and a safe environment as well. I know that we have to keep traffic speeds down. I think we have options to do that outside of just the width of the street. I think we can do pumps, where the bump outs are to slow traffic as they come into the street, and we can also do speed bumps or speed pumps. So I think that we have to consider those as well when we're making a decision. I think we also really have to try to minimize construction impact, and I think that all of our staff and the engineer are on board with that understanding that we have to do the best we can to minimize the number of trees we take out, the number of fences we remove, the number of buildings that are going to be impacted. And then we also have to consider future foot traffic. I know that right now we don't have a ton of people coming up and down Church Street, but there is a good number right now, I would say, living right there at Church and Third. I see kids, a lot of kids coming up and down, and other individuals. And as we go forward with the construction downtown, i.e. the Plaza Center, the new office we put down there, and then hopefully businesses and some sort of a environment that people want to come visit, hopefully this whole downtown will be busy. And so we do need to consider that as well, that eventually we may have parking issues downtown, and those parking issues will spill out into the neighboring streets. I know none of us want that, but if we consider it now, it'll lessen the impact in the future. So once again, thank you so much for speaking up and really being here for all these meetings. You've all been here consistently. That's all I have to say.
Do you have a recommendation on different options? Do you want to go there yet, or just, do you have a recommendation, or?
Personally, I feel like, the one closest to the Skinny Street option is probably going to be the best option for us. So the hybrid option, 39.
Thank you. Sarah, you've been involved with Stuart, if you want to go next.
Sure. Yeah, I just want to echo some of what Stuart said. Like, thank you for coming out. I talked with many of you on Friday. Thanks for chatting with me and spending some of your time with me. And some of the questions I did get a couple of people asked about a one-way street. And I don't know if that would work in this configuration. I think that's probably why we're not seeing it. But other than that, I heard, folks obviously are concerned about impacts from encroachments. I also heard some folks when we were discussing some of the options, some folks were concerned about people being confused about how the road worked. If we went too skinny with it and if people had to pull off. So that was something that I heard. I also heard that, safety is a concern. I talked to some folks who live over on First Street who have kids and were a little bit concerned about, traffic speed, and also just walkability because they have young kids there. So I think, again, it's all a balance, right? It's a balance of considering the impacts to people's yards, to trees, to safety, to how this community is going to develop in the future, and obviously what the people who have been living there and who live there now want to see. So in terms of things that I've heard people prefer, I think that one of the options, like the one sidewalk option, was something that I heard a lot, was that people wanted to reduce the overall impact. So I think too, I am concerned, I am weighing those considerations that people have about street width, and if we're really being cautioned against 7 feet, that is something I'm taking really seriously. I don't want to see accidents happen on our streets. I don't want to see people being hit by cars. So I think that that's an important consideration to make. So that's why I'm also leaning towards the 39-foot hybrid option right now.
Jim, do you want to go, or as president, you want to pass like Bruce used to do?
Well, let me just throw out a few ideas. Let me kind of wrestling with this. I didn't make the last meeting. I had a personal thing going on, but I've been to a couple of other meetings and I've heard tonight. I understand what you really want to do is save the character and save the ecology of the street. And I understand why you're doing that. When I look at my thoughts about traffic flow and volume of flow, this side of 99 is pretty well built out. There's only a handful of lots that don't have a house on it. So I don't think we're going to see a monstrous number of cars on Church Street because of construction or anything else on this side. I think what we got now is pretty much what we're going to get. So I don't see that much change. There probably will be some more foot traffic for the reasons that you described here in a minute. But those of you who live there, how many times do you walk down to the corner to cross the street to get to the other side versus just walking straight across the street? I think most of the time you go straight across the street. Human nature says that. So I'm not even sure the bulb outs are useful in the sense of protecting people. I know why they're there. Short distance walking traffic. But I don't think human nature requires the ball dots. They can be there, but in my view, but you know, they're not useful to me on that particular street. Saving the trees is important, the ecology is important. I don't think right now we have enough information to be near perfect on what's going to happen no matter what we do because of the utility part of this. If we had infinite time and money, I would just say hire the arborist now, give them all the different options we had, look at every darn tree on the street according to every option and tell us which option would kill that tree. And then you sum it over all the trees and figure out the impact. I don't know that we're going to necessarily do that, but that would be an optimal solution. Otherwise, we're going to live with what we end up getting, a risk that the idea will work or won't work. I have had the unfortunate pleasure way too many times in my life of driving on the equivalent of skinny streets in Europe. It requires a mindset driven in by decades and generations of doing that, not to kill each other, because it's very narrow. I even have that displeasure recently, quite frequently on Church Street as it is. If there's a big truck coming by in my little Toyota, I have to pull over or they have to pull over on certain segments of the street already. It's already too narrow. So the skinny option, while it sounds nice because of the things it does for the ecology, I'm not sure it's the safe thing. Because if you get the first person out there who's in a hurry, maybe has a little bit too much intoxication of some sort, and decides to rush it, and you're going to have some accidents out there. I have to be very careful when driving on certain segments of Church Street right now not to get hit by trucks. I don't know that the utility of having sidewalks on both sides for the volume of people we have now and in the future is necessary. So I kind of agree that sidewalk on one side, which can minimize other impacts, is probably a more optimal solution than on both sides. We just have to make sure that we follow the laws and how wide that one sidewalk is, if that's an option to go to. So when I look at those things, the ideal thing for planning 20 years from now is going to be different houses, perhaps different people living on Church Street. Maybe they buy an old house, tear it down, put it in a building, and they'd rather have a modern area. Then the TSP standard is probably the right one. But I don't think it fits the mindset that people are going to be there for the next decade or 2 decades, or even 3 decades. So, to me, the only ones that kind of work are maybe the 39, because the sidewalks only on one side. And there is parking, and the 8 foot is probably minimum to get by. But I know my rearview mirrors stick out, and I've had some bad experiences with not wanting to hit mirrors on other cars. So I think these are the only choices I have, and I must choose one. I kind of think the 39 kind of fits the optimization of all the different ideas outside of the null set of not doing anything. But if we do nothing, we're still going to have the utilities possibly destroying some of the trees for some reason. So, you know, like them, I'm kind of with the 39 only because it seems to adjust many of the problems. One more thing we did here near the end about the one way. Personally, if I were trying to optimize this thing to make the least impact, a one-way street that is probably 10 feet wide with one direction going counter to 99 is probably the only thing. That's the only thing I know of that will solve the problem that some people seem to think is there, that people getting on Church Street to bypass 99. But if it's in the opposite direction, you can't do that. Okay. That solves that problem. Nothing else solves that problem. So if it's a big deal, we should do a one-way street. If it's not a big deal, it's just an impression that it's kind of a problem, and it's not more cars that are going to be on the street in the future, then something like the 39 kind of works for me. So those are the two things I would think. 39 or a one-way street that is maybe a street of 10 feet.
Thank you.
That's kind of right.
I got a real quick, I think it's important piece of information that I just thought of. Okay. Keep in mind when you're deciding which option to go with, if you were to go out there right now and measure the asphalt in the street, how wide it is. The existing asphalt in that street is 16 to 18 feet wide right now.
It's actually about 20 of my foot. There the other morning, there's 20 of my feet. My feet are a little bit more than one 1 foot, it's about 20.5 feet.
Okay, so that's even more impacted. So with that being said, there's parking, there's cars parked everywhere out there. So when this street is built, these 8-foot parking lanes on each side, personally, I think most of them are going to be full. So you're ending up with a 16-foot wide street to drive on. It's actually narrower than what's already out there. So I just want you to keep that in mind.
Thank you. Councilor Cameron, please.
So I agree with, the feedback that I heard from residents was that they understood the compromise, but the sidewalks on both sides was a little too much. And I've driven it and I've walked it, and I do agree also that I think a 70-foot, 14-foot both ways is a little bit narrower. Especially if you have your bigger trucks that have the big mirrors, safety, little kids running in the street, not being aware of things. That extra foot might give an extra second or two to protect those kids that might be in the community. And so I lean also towards the hybrid 39 option, with even thinking of maybe narrowing that 6-foot sidewalk to 5. I don't know what ADA requirement is, but
yeah,
there's no impact of ADA, 6 foot versus 5 foot.
so there's not a.
No. Anything else, Council?
No. I'm good.
Thank you. Councilor Shaw.
This is a tough one. One, I want to start off with, I understand we're setting precedents with what we're going to do in the future, but the proximity to the 99, I think, is an additional consideration that isn't going to affect other streets in the community necessarily. If we make this street wide, it's going to become more attractive to, as an alternative to the 99. It's going to increase traffic and probably increase speeds and frustration for the residents and people on the street. We can adjust in the future for other streets that are further away from the 99, so we don't necessarily have to make this a cookie cutter where we use on every street. We can adjust a little in the future. We've got precedent already with one sidewalk. We both live on Elm, and most Elm, there's no sidewalk. And then once you get by us, there's one sidewalk. And I'd say about 50% of people walk on the street. Mm-hmm. Yeah, including both of us. Yeah. So there's that consideration. Also, mentioned it earlier, but we're not going to increase the building density on Church Street. So there's probably not going to be any more local residents needing to, ingress and egress their property. Yeah. So we built that. We don't want to change any of that. And it goes along with that. The small street, the tight neighborhood feel, in areas like this are getting rarer. And if we're thinking about our image as a city long term, how we differentiate ourselves from Ashland, Talent, and Medford, so we don't become South Medford. Areas like this are part of our bread and butter to give us identity. So I think that's really an important consideration. In fact, I think the 99 should kind of look more, just with the feel of the houses, and it's a cool feel. Anyways, 5, Tony, shout out to Tony. We heard from 29 residents. Got a signature by 29 residents. 17 out of 36 properties were represented, is my understanding. So that's pretty considerable. I didn't really hear anything that was, diametrically opposed to that either. So everybody seemed to be pretty in line with each other, and I think that's a really, really big factor. In fact, I think all of this is a good model for us when we expand to more 99 discussion. All of this input, getting that level of input from the residents and the community is going to have a huge impact. Not just, we've talked to 100 people or whatever, but everybody that we can to get in and hear from them. And I think it's tough. It comes down to it. I was disappointed to see that the one that was proposed a couple weeks ago wasn't on there. I call it a skinny street hybrid, maybe, from what we have up there, where it's one sidewalk, 8, 14, 8, 5. Definitely with sidewalk on the west side. Not to prioritize the east side, but those trees actually function for cooling those houses. And as we heard from residents, some people don't have air conditioning on those houses and they rely on those in the summertime. And so that's a big retrofitting an older house with air conditioning and having it look nice and not having ducting run along the side of the houses. I mean, those houses are, a lot of them are really special houses that we want to keep. Not to deprioritize the west side, but those east side trees provide a valuable impact. So I'm leaning between like an 814, 8.5 option. So to remove the sidewalk on the one side and do an 8-foot parking lane, I think it's vital to have two parking on either side there. But then the hybrid option, the 39 foot, I mean, that might be interesting. We save a foot to move the sidewalk from 65 also. So then we're getting pretty close. If you do an 8 foot on that, you're talking 36 feet. If you take a foot off of that sidewalk, you're at 38. So we're within 2 feet of either option there. Right, so get close, we narrowed down. Nice, okay. That's my piece.
Also bigger. Grateful for everybody's input and for the ones that knocked on hospitality and your willingness to talk. I heard several different themes talking to people. The ones that came here, the ones that I met with. They want to keep the small town feel, which I get. That's part of why I like it here too. They want to think about safety, how fast people drive, like lanes. I get that too. The minimal property damage, I totally get that, right? Because I'm on the same road as you. Highway 99 spillover that would come along with the wider lanes if we open it up like the recommended, the original recommended. We already have Highway 99 spillover. I'm in a unique position to see the majority of it because people cut up goals and turn left. And I see, so I may see more than people at the other end, depending on how far down church they're going, right? But I see quite a bit, and I see people fly by my house quite a bit going faster than I wish they would. Most of them are pretty good, but we got little kids that play off this. We got little kids that live in those apartments at Twin Circle that come across and they play in the lawn in front of the. They don't have a lawn of their own to play in, and I feel like it bothers me to see how some of the people perform on that road. Something else I've heard about is we always talk about walkability for the needs to be a walkable town, and that's a great point. Somebody here tonight mentioned that if you had narrower roads, it would detract people from taking it as much. That should be on, say, Highway 99 driving straight. I almost thought it'd be cool if we could add a bike lane, take out something and add a bike lane, and then if 2 cars were coming, but you don't want to intentionally drive people on the bike lanes and stuff. It's safe. So just really thinking outside the box. So, but the real overwhelming concerns I've heard was just people don't want a sidewalk in front of their front porch. That's exaggerating a little bit. But I was driving down Stewart Avenue. I don't know how many of you are driving Stewart Avenue. But when they widened that out this last time, and I think it was back in the 90s, moved right in there. Man, you drive down Stewart Avenue, those houses used to sit nice and far back off the road. And now, dude, it's like, you go out to collect your paper that, there could be getting run over by a car on it. It's just really tight, Easy delivery, all this. Right? So, I think if I had to pick one, and this is, I'm not a big Skinny Street fan. I've checked out Ashland several times now. How does that work? The things I didn't like was obviously flipping mirrors, that possibility. I have a full-size pickup. I drove it during busy times, weekends and weekdays just to see, and it was kind of a pain in the neck, right? But that is more of a plaza situation. They've got their Ace Hardware there, and there's a strip mall that has all kinds of different businesses in it. And during the busy times, I think if you drive down, you should just expect to get backed up in traffic and maybe park around. Unless you can find a good parking place. There's something else that they do there that I don't agree with, is that they do require parking on both sides, like you mentioned. I wouldn't want that either. I mean, you do have to have a little bit of wiggle room. So, just for my 2 cents, I'm really advocating for the Skinny Street solution. whether it be this one or the one that they came up with. I know that it's narrower than what most people are comfortable with, but I also know that nobody's comfortable with, the really wide ones. So, and one thing it would do is it would, people who take that road would know, they would be trained. It's not a fast road, keep them slowed down. So, that's my 2 cents. I'm for the skinny street, but we'll see how it pans out.
Are you for
Thanks, Terry.
2 sidewalks in Skinny Street or 2 parking on 5?
Are you talking, you're for that street or
next one? Next one.
this one?
I like the other configuration better.
You're talking that 8-foot parking instead of that 5-foot sidewalk?
8-foot parking instead of 5-foot sidewalk, 5-foot sidewalk.
Go one left.
One left.
That?
33 foot. Only instead of 33, it would be 36.
Yeah.
Well, we're within 2 feet.
You get one. I'm gonna take a few minutes here. You guys, okay? I'm just, I spoke to a lot of constituents, and one person said, actually, when we moved in the house 13 years ago, the first thing I did was plant trees. And I thought, the same people have been doing the same thing for years. You move into that side of the road, and you're gonna plant trees. It's a natural, organic outgrowth of having sun hit that side of the homes. So that's why there's so many trees there. It's just a natural thing to do. And almost all the impacted trees are naturally on the east side of the street. If you go block by block, you'll see a lot of trees on the east side, not the west side. There aren't a lot of impacted trees on the west side. And I, of course, want to maintain the Church Street charm. But I just want to, I'm going to step up this for a second. Don't mind. This one here, this thing that came the petition is almost this one right here. Can I have your pointer? Yes. So this one here is almost the same thing as this here, except 2 feet. This one here is 41 feet total. This one here is actually less of an impact right here than the Skinny Street option that's here. It's less of a footprint. What I would do, back together here, I would center this pavement, I would center this pavement here. I would move this where it says 8 foot here. I'd move that up just a notch right here, but the same place as this 5 foot beginning sidewalk here. And leave this room, like Stuart said, if in the future you need sidewalks on that side, you can put sidewalks on that side. And I would just move that up here. I would take this whole pavement and go to the up here, 5 foot, this is 6 foot. I don't see a need for a 6 foot sidewalk. No one's convinced me that we need 6 foot sidewalks at church. Doesn't make any sense to me. So I would simply take this, start it here, come up here, if possible, do 7.5 foot parking, maybe 8 feet. But I wouldn't do that. The reason I'm saying that is over on this side here are all the trees. If you have pavement extending here, you're going to do more harm to the trees. So I'm trying to have as little impact as possible to the trees. It's either underneath the ground or it's on the top because you have impervious surfaces. So that would go to here. I'd make that 5 foot. That'd be my solution.
All right, and something to keep, I didn't mention it and I meant to. A key dimension to think about before you make a decision is 32 feet, curb face to curb face.
Yeah, that's what it is now.
Yeah, and that's what the hybrids 1 and 2 are, because we're already narrowing the travel way to 16 feet. Mm-hmm. And then I would not recommend narrowing the parking strip with it as well. So 32 feet, maybe you go to a 5 foot sidewalk on one side, like you said, and then you necessarily, it's just an option. You don't center the improvements in the right way, you shift it one way or the other. If the residents on one side of the street aren't going to get upset, hey, you shifted it more my way than the other, as long as they know we did that to try to save those huge trees on the east side of the street.
And I think people in general, I talked to on the other side, I think they're okay with that. I didn't hear a lot of complaints. I said, don't move it more on my side, more saving the charm and saving the important. You may be coming 2 or 3 feet more on this side here. But
typically you center them, but
yeah,
those are just your options.
I understand, but I just moved that up a little bit. The wider sidewalks, I have signed from both sides. It doesn't make any sense. I don't think anyone here is going to go for sidewalks on both sides. So I think the really is
as far as why I don't think it's a good decision. Foot traffic increase, talk about that storage thing. I wouldn't have any bulb outs actually, but staff wants bulb outs, that's fine.
It's a point I just want to throw out there about the bulb outs.
Yeah.
A main reason for those, can I take your pointer back? Or my pointer back? It's your pointer. What these bulb outs, the main reason for these bulb outs is when you have parking along here and you got a car parked right here, say, and somebody comes around that corner, it's to protect that car on the ends of the parking lanes. So it's not traffic calming because it's a little narrower and you got to slow down. But in reality, the main reason for that is to protect this guy's car or lady's car that's sitting here at the end of this from somebody coming around and clipping the corner of it.
Okay. Take it back to the other. I'm almost done.
With all the
Whoops. Yeah. Thank you. And just lastly, as far as not making it one way, as opposed to two way, if you got a problem on 99, it's probably a problem. I say solve the problem on 99. Don't try to solve it on 99 with Church Street. And lastly, when we're done doing this, change the TSP. So I'm doing this for Pine Street. I have to cups every single time, conditional use permits. But that was it.
Thanks, Chris.
There you go.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. So.
Okay, so your suggestion, just to clarify, to repeat, was hybrid option 30, maybe reducing the sidewalk to 5 and then pushing it up, pushing it west a couple of feet to try to save some more east side trees.
Save some more trees and 50 sidewalks later on. I don't think foot traffic ever going to go up to the point where it's going to be necessary. But if for some crazy reason we get a lot of foot traffic, you put sidewalks on that side of the road now, and it's not going to be way over near the trees because the pavement starts.
Sure. And you're only a block away from 99 where we want to take a lot too.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Moving it up a little bit, 5-foot sidewalk. Well, I'm okay with, even if we had a 6-foot sidewalk, I'm okay. I just don't want to see the pavement start closer to the trees. And that's it. Absolutely.
I think too, yeah, I would be okay with like a 5-foot sidewalk on that side. I would just really want us to make sure that it complies with ADA because I know that in our downtown area, we're bumping into a lot of problems because our sidewalks weren't built to ADA code and now we're having to redo them and that's really, really expensive. So that if we are going that direction, that we confirm that we're going to be okay there.
So really, for a second,
yeah.
The problem downtown is that it's the ramps. It's not the sidewalks up with,
No,
but it's the ramps going.
I was just drawing a parallel that when you have to fix an ADA fix, it can be really expensive and problematic.
Thank you.
So I'm going to make sure that we're consideration.
And on those returns where you have those ADA ramps, we could widen behind that. So you'd have a 5-foot sidewalk and then at the, where we have the jog in Church Street, we could widen that sidewalk out because you need a certain space behind the ramp that's not over 2%. So we have options there.
Okay.
One thing about what you're talking about is pushing it upward. It now puts the utilities in blue, which is the water, underneath the asphalt as opposed to underneath the sidewalk.
You want
That's a positive outcome.
You want underneath the asphalt.
And keep in mind too, this is just graphical and it's kind of close. Those utilities are varying all over the place. So we had no way of showing it in a graphic.
Sure.
And again, too, those two utilities are going to impact the trees more than anything.
So I think we're kind of to, as I see it, and I hear us saying 5-foot sidewalk is a 6-foot sidewalk, and Terry, you were one gentleman here who deviated from the rest of the crowd, but it seems like consensus is going to 5-foot sidewalk with a hybrid option number, the 39-footer, and then moving things up a little bit, like I mentioned before. I don't see a lot of downside to that, but if that's okay with council and
now we have the 38-foot.
Yes, the 38 foot.
Well, so now we've adjusted what we presented to the residents to kind of digest, right? Would it be appropriate if we were going to think about that option, 5, 888, and then 8 hybrid option 39, which now becomes 38, to see if there's any input?
What we had is a petition signed for almost the exact same thing,
Mhm.
except for sidewalk.
Actually, the petition that was signed is actually, was 3 feet wider than the option you guys are talking now, so it's actually skinnier by 3 feet.
Okay, so I think it hits everything, I think it nails it, to tell you the truth. But I'd like to see, at this point, I think I don't wanna beat this into the ground, but if somebody can make a motion, it's gonna be kind of an odd motion, but I appreciate a motion that says 5-foot sidewalk for the 39-foot option, and with the pavement about, I don't know, 2 or 3 feet, whatever it is.
I'll make a motion that we move forward with the 38-foot option, which would be a 5-foot sidewalk on one side, 8-foot parking on each side, and 2 8-foot travel lanes, and adjust the asphalt up in this picture here to lessen the impact of the trees on the east side.
Yeah, and I'd even add to that, I think you should have the ability to, per your approval, just that section vary, I guess is what I'm trying to say, so we're not locked into, okay, it's gonna be the edge of the 5-foot sidewalk is gonna be X from that right of way. Since you have a 60-foot right of way, I think you should look at approving a 38-foot section with a 5-foot sidewalk and adjust that to impact.
Per condition.
Yeah, well, for the trees, for example. Yeah, because if the trees there's more trees, some places there's more trees on the west side and there isn't any on the north side, so you have that option. Yeah.
So it'd be sort of motion with some discretion given to the contractor to help.
Well, the engineer and the city approve it.
Does anybody make an amendment to that thing?
Well, I think we got the wording in here. If you look at the recommendation on both recommendation and proposed motion, it says, with an effort made to preserve existing visible encroachments and natural elements within the right of way. To support the project.
Yeah.
I think we add that to the, I think that captures what he's trying to communicate, and that helps us.
Mr. Mayor, may I make a point of order that this request there is disagreement that this request will direct staff to present preferred option to the planning commission, correct?
Yes.
Because okay, and then I'll have another point of order after that, but I'm going to shut up for now.
Want to withdraw your motion and restate it with that.
Okay, so I'll withdraw. The same thing with the effort too.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion for the 38-foot option with the 5-foot sidewalk, 8-foot parking on both sides, 2 8-foot travel, and with an effort made to preserve existing physical encroachments and natural elements within the city right of way as is practical to support the project.
Perfect. Thank you. A second, please. Thank you. Any more discussion? Sure.
I totally get what you guys are saying, and I do not disagree with it. The only thing is, it's too wide. These people are gonna have, it's gonna impact the properties. That's all I have to say. Too wide.
Thank you, Terry. More discussion?
It's almost 10 feet off the original, out of the original, what's called for in the TSP, that's just.
Yeah, it's about 3 feet less than the petition.
Yes. Okay. Hey guys, we're gonna wrap it up and I'm gonna call some questions. Okay. Roll call, please.
Councilor Sean,
Yes.
Councilor Snyder,
They sit up there.
and Mayor.
Affirmative. Aye. Yes.
Councilor Cameron? Yes. Councilor Westover? Yay. Councilor Warren?
Yes.
Councilor Baker?
No. Motion passes 5-1. I just want to say that the process that we went through, guys, it took a long time. It's just unusual. But I think if you look back at the way that we did it, I think we did it in a very communal way and got down to some good discussions. I think what we ended up with is a wonderful decision, and I think that's good for the city.
I would just like to thank everybody for their time and effort in listening to people and trying to look at other points of view. I know you guys put a lot of extra time outside of your normal box. And I appreciate you listening to the citizens and taking that into consideration.
Yeah, I give you that.
Thanks, guys. We're gonna make it.
We end on a positive.
Thank you. We're gonna move on. Half hour before we have to extend. But thank you everybody for coming. Appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor, may I make, this is the second half of my point of order, and this applies equally to people on both sides of me. Now that this has been directed to go to Planning Commission, it is a quasi-judicial decision, which means all of our ex parte contact rules apply, which means you can no longer accept testimony outside of a hearing.
Thank you, Emmett.
So please remember that, because that can destroy the integrity of the hearing and leave us open to appeal for the most mundane issues. And I would hate to have us waste time on an appeal that we don't need to do, and that's the Planning Commission as well. So if anybody wishes to provide testimony from here on out, please make it written, please submit it to staff at City Hall, and it will go in the formal record, which will be going to the Planning Commission. So in order
to talk to these citizens,
exactly, and so if anybody wants to talk to you about it, kindly inform them that you cannot accept testimony, and if they keep talking, run away.
Thank you, appreciate it. We're gonna move on to the public comment period, the consent agenda. Now, there's one thing I'm gonna hold, we're gonna hold the minutes. But does anyone want to fully count the signed minutes of the consent agenda? Move along here. Okay. Anybody want to fully count? No. So I'll accept the motion to approve the consent agenda list minutes. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes by unanimous consent. The item that was pulled is the minutes, and Jim had one notation that, well, guys,
if you look on page near the bottom, there's paragraph number 9, ordinance. If you look just above that, it has a roll call vote that my name on it is not physically present, so it was missing one of our other esteemed councilors. With that correction,
with the correction substitute, Snyder for Westall, the vote.
I know we look like, but.
So I'll need a motion to approve the minutes as changed.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so minutes are approved. Next item is resolution number 1005, resolution of the Phoenix City Council declaring surplus. I'm sorry. We're at number 9. Sorry, thank you. First reading by title only, ordinance number 992, and ordinance amending ordinance 977 for the amendment to authorize imposition of penalties and interest on late payments of the 3% tax on sale of recreational marijuana items for recreational marijuana retailers. Staff, want to talk about this one?
It's real simple. We're just trying to sync our ordinance with what the voters approved. Somehow, the ordinance that the council approved after the voters approved it was different, so it just makes them the same. So that's really it. It's general.
More housekeeping issue.
Yeah.
Okay. Any discussion, guys? Okay. I'll entertain a motion to approve the first reading by title only of ordinance number 992. Well,
So, okay, deep breath. I move to approve the first reading by title only of ordinance number 992 and ordinance amendment to authorize the imposition of penalties and interest on late payments of the 3% tax on the sale of recreational marijuana by a recreational marijuana retailer and move the ordinance to second reading.
Second, please.
Second.
Okay, any more discussion? Okay, call for the question, roll call please.
Counselor Westover?
Yes.
Counselor Warren?
Yes.
Counselor Baker?
Yes.
Counselor Shamp? Counselor Schneider?
Yes.
Counselor Cameron?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, it passes unanimously. Next item is 9B, first reading by title only of ordinance number 993, an ordinance to repeal contents of chapter 3.04 and replace with new rules modeled after League of Oregon Cities 2017 model policy for public contracting and purchasing code. We spent a lot of time on this. Jim's gone through reading it. Former attorneys looked at it. Current attorneys looked at it. Staff want to talk about it for a second?
Sure, I think this is one of the things that I think long-term will make it a lot easier to keep up to date with the changes in the law. The current system is very antiquated. I think the reason why League of Oregon Cities does this is for communities like us. So we kind of have a decentralized purchasing system, and it's easier to follow than the state rules that go for like state entities and those kind of things. This is more specific for city codes. I'm gonna allow Doug to maybe clarify a couple things. I don't think it changes what we want to accomplish tonight. But
It doesn't, Ted, just, I noticed that when I was going through, when I had approved the changes to this ordinance, that I just didn't put in a couple different ordinance provisions. You're seeing what you see here, the mark out, crossed out part of the ordinance, and that's 3.04.010. But there's also 020 all the way up to 110. And I didn't put that in there. So when it comes back to you, I'm going to eliminate all those as well. The whole entire ordinance that exists now will be removed. I just only removed the first chapter as opposed, or the first section as opposed to 4 more sections. And then I will also, I know that Mr. Snyder worked on it. I will be putting in the actual numbers in place for where those belong in the new one. As it is now, it's new Roman numerals, but typically you would, if you're looking for them as a practitioner, you'd be looking for ordinance, or what section am I looking for, 3.04 or something, as opposed to Roman numeral 1, Roman numeral 5. So I'll be changing those. It won't be changing any of the substance of what you put together and have already looked at. So to that end, it won't change anything. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good, Jim.
I read it again last night and this morning.
Oh, is that
No, I have 3 questions. I just want to bring to everybody's attention so we can figure it out. If you go to page 62 of the packet, which is page 11 of the document, near the map is a paragraph number 4, and then there's 3 letters into that, and it says delegate in order as follows. The first one is an auditor. They identified for me because I asked who the auditor was, whose name should not be in the document. That was a mistake on my part asking that. But the real question is, why is an auditor in the process of the delegation of this order? I thought auditor's job was to review the work of the operators and decision makers. This makes them a decision maker. I'm not sure that auditor actually belongs in that list.
I would agree with that. One thing that I will mention in purchasing that we're seeing more and more auditor being involved with is making sure we go through the process correctly. But I've never seen it where they have any kind of authority to approve.
Yeah, this is delegated in writing signature authority. That means they're not an operator.
Yeah.
It makes sense.
So that makes sense.
So you're looking to strike 4A.
Yeah, I think take 4A out and change B to A and C to B. The second one's on page 74, which is page 23 of the document. Near the bottom, there's a paragraph, B as in Bravo, disposal of property. And it talks about being less than 500. I just want to make sure that we're clear that this is $500 for an individual item as opposed to a bundle of items we want to get rid of. Because sometimes you can have valuable items stuck in there I'm just wondering if that's a single item we're talking about, or is it a grouping of items we're trying to get rid of?
This is on the sale of.
Yeah, disposition of property was number
Page
7.
7.
Right, word, that's why I make sure. That's why I make sure it's individual. Plus with the bundle.
Yeah.
Well, you're looking at individual items, so it's surplus property, which has a value of less than 500. Now, if you had a whole bunch of leftover hubcaps, that was considered the one item of surplus property you were getting rid of. Yes, that would be $500. But if you're saying hubcaps plus a car plus, you know, a couple other things in which they're unrelated, in other words, typically that's kind of how you get rid of your surplus, is you group it together, and so.
Of like items.
Of like items, yeah, so.
Okay, as long as we understand it, right?
Yeah,
The
that's
last-
how it typically.
The last one's on page 77, which is 26 of the document. Near the bottom, there's a number 5, judicial review. I hope I'm not reading this wrong personally. An affected person may not seek judicial review of an election not to take a sole source procurement. And then it has A and B, which talks about the judicial review. I think the word not, may not, should be not.
Did you
Should
say
be
it's-
may.
Did you say it's number 26 of the document?
26 of the document, page 77.
Five. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, I think 5, it says may not, I think it should be may. Just based on what's on the next 2 sub-paragraphs.
Can I get where we are again? I lost you.
Page 26.
It's page 77.
Page 77.
Number 5. Page 75. Okay.
Section
C.
Yeah.
It's helpful when a bunch of people say it at the same time.
Yeah, it is helpful.
It is.
It's helpful when you
Everybody. Okay, all right, everybody, ready? Page 77, number 5.
Yeah.
Judicial review.
An affected person may not seek judicial review. Read A and B below that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that should be,
So I think not is not supposed to be there.
Yeah, that would be an extra word in there. That's
Yeah.
not correct. Not correct.
Those are the 3 things.
Yeah.
Next one.
Unlike the
Yes.
Did you read? Make sure.
Can you go with us? Okay, cool.
Oh, yeah, this is fine, perfect, you guys, good job.
Okay, more discussion?
No, that's why.
Thank you. So I'll entertain a motion. It's for the first reading. Motion, language is ahead of the standard.
Okay,
Ken.
46 for the packet?
Yep, 46, thank you. 47 is actually right.
47.
I move approval on first reading by title only of an ordinance to repeal contents of chapter 3.04 and replace with the new rules modeled after the Oregon City's 2017 model policy for public contracting and purchasing code, and with Councilor Jim Schneider's amendments, and establish February 20th, 2018 as the public hearing date and second reading of said ordinance.
Second. All right, roll call please.
Counselor Cameron.
Yes.
Counselor Westover.
Yes.
Counselor Warren.
Yes.
Counselor Baker.
Yes.
Counselor Shunk.
Yes.
Counselor Snyder.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion approved unanimously. 9C is the second reading. Public hearing ordinance number 991, ordinance of the city of Phoenix adopting amendments to chapters 2.2, 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3 the land development code. Take staff and some input.
Okay. I think we've sort of summarized what we're trying to accomplish here at the last meeting. I don't know if anybody has any additional questions.
Well, the only thing I noticed was the comments from one of our constituents about the 200 feet becoming 100 feet. I'm just wondering where we're at with that. He's not here tonight to justify it.
I was at the planning commission when that happened, and they decided to switch over to the location area versus 200 feet. That discussion until commission approved.
So I guess we're taking the lease or.
I can speak to that briefly. This would only apply to type which by their nature have no discretion. It simply involves a notice of a pending decision and then the actual decision. And so this is not something that would be going to the planning commission where there is discretion exercised. And so their feeling of the commission was to basically make sure neighbors are notified and call it good. If the council thinks that keeping the 200-foot radius is preferable, then that's fine. Simply, I would say put that in your motion. It was just a matter that the way the code is currently written, it's 200 feet for the notice, 100 feet for the decision. There is a discrepancy. If we want to leave it that way, we can. If we want to make it the same, we can. I just wanted to raise the issue and have the discussion.
I have a feeling one way or the other, but from a practical standpoint, 100 versus 200 feet, that's like an unmarked property. Would be caught up on either side.
Potentially, every situation varies, depends on how large the properties are, but absolutely everybody who abuts the property would get notice regardless. Going to 200 might get the people on the next street over, perhaps, in some instances, but it would vary.
I just caution council not, I don't believe should overrule the planning commission. This is something really extraordinary, just to let you know.
No, it's not. I just saw that issue raised on the background of the implications. I think the fact that captures the one on either side of that property probably the most relevant part of that. Good.
More input from staff. You've done it.
I don't have anything else. I'm just here for questions, Darby.
With that said, I'm going to open up a public hearing. I'd like to hear from people who like to speak in favor of our ordinance number 991. I'd like to speak, I hear people who like to speak or oppose to ordinance number 991. Hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Discussion by council. I'll entertain a motion. Yes, go ahead, Jeremy.
Let's say for the interest of transparency, notice, there are people who are upset that you better notice for this First Street discussion. I like to see it stay.
I'll entertain a motion.
I move adoption of ordinance by title only, ordinance number 9, to adopt amendments to chapters 2.2, 4.1, 4.2, 4.3 of the Phoenix Land Development Code.
Second. We're going to discuss, I think you said it's the first reading, it's second. Does it say second reading in the motion or say first reading?
It says second reading.
Let's go ahead and do it again. Do the second reading. Or page.
You know, it's the proposal.
No, when he said that, you had used the word first reading. So.
So it's second reading.
Well, actually, if you look at page 81, the proposed motion reads, I move adoption, so it's second reading, it's adoption. Page 81?
That's what I read.
I heard the first reading. All right.
This is one more time. Okay.
I will read it from the script. I move adoption of ordinance by title only, ordinance number 991, to adopt amendments to chapters 2.2, 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3 of the Phoenix Land Development Code.
Again, you're right, I'm sorry. Everybody, incorrect.
More description?
All right, I missed that too. So do it. Thinking about your mic. Roll call, please.
Councilor Snyder?
Yes.
Councilor Cameron?
Yes.
Councilor Westover?
Yes.
Councilor Warren? Councilor Baker?
Yes.
Councilor Sean?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mayor's comments, council comments. Since the answer. Trustee Attorney. Good, you good? It's not good. Thank you. I want to thank Eric for a short time here, 3 months, 4 months, the amount of work that you staying longer. Needed a 6 very 6 months worth. Thank you very much. You did a good job, got a lot done, and I appreciate you. It's a great day. Thank you. You're welcome. Mayor's comments, a couple of things, guys. I'm still working with Ms. Vincent, who owns the Phoenix gas station. She and I had a little conversation about this, and I spoke to her daughter today and had a contract for demolition of the building. I went to forward it, council approval for it, and forward it to her, and she can discuss it with the siblings and with Vincent and try to do the demolition of that building forward. Okay. And second thing, we do need to cover or take on a solution to change the chunk of land next to the new plaza building to a real park. So we can use that money from marijuana proceeds or taxes to help fund something that go on with the park. So I want to instruct staff to come up with a resolution to make that a real park. And that's it by me. What's the first? I don't have nothing. You're not at me.
I'm good.
You good?
The Chambers Readers Meeting is going to be held on the 13th at the new coffee house, Jam, in the morning, and the board meeting will be at, on the 21st at Pascal's.
What was that date again? 8:30 at Jam?
At 2:13.
February actually is, I'm sorry, Nick, that's wrong.
Is that wrong?
That's wrong.
Nine.
March is Jam, February is the genealogy.
Thank you.
Right.
Thanks
So
for correcting
we'll find out and then we'll get it in an email, okay? Great. Jim figure out.
Just a question for anybody knows. I saw a banner today that I quickly to read. It talked about the high school having an auction.
Right.
What's behind? What do they actually do? You know?
I don't know.
Is it the FFA actually?
It might be.
I think it's the auction for the scholarships.
It's for grad night.
For grad night.
For grad
night.
So they have a party that's not, they get like the family fun center and they do it every year and they raise a bunch of money and the kids can go to the family fun center where there's no alcohol being served and have a real fun night. It's a real great thing they do.
Yeah, FFA does a big dinner.
Okay, that's all I have.
Thanks, Eric. It's been a pleasure to work with you. Wish it was lasting longer, but completely. Next thing I would like to see, at some point we agendize a conversation about how we're noticing people and come up with a good, or just at least have a conversation as a about how we're doing it and what we want to see that look like for future projects, mainly for like these street projects or any other infrastructure projects, so we can really nail it down what that's supposed to look like and how we're supposed to proceed, you know, after we notice as opposed to proceeding beforehand. And I know that this whole project was a little bit different. We didn't know the layout, but I think it would be worth us having a conversation about it at some point. And also, just one request. I would love to not receive any more paper packets. Please. No, it's fine.
Yeah.
But just so it's on the record.
I'll take mine too. I'll give it away. Great, so just a quick announcement that we're planning to have the next CPAC meeting on Monday the 12th. We won't be discussing any elements at that time. We're just going to be discussing different ways we could potentially do public outreach at the end of the UGB application process after we've got the elements finalized, which it won't be for a long time. I'm trying to determine whether or not we have quorum for that meeting, so it might get canceled, but I'll keep you all posted. I think that's it.
Thank you. So we're gonna wait to I'm gonna adjourn the city council meeting for this. And, Stuart, you wanna talk about the renewal? We can be that meeting.
Yeah, so to reconvene the Phoenix Urban Renewal Agency meeting.
Can we stop for just a second? I
No.
have to
We're gonna rush there. We're gonna take a break.
No, you don't have to take a break.
Do you want to PowerPoint back?
I don't want a break, is what he said.
I'll be right back.
You want his PowerPoint back on?